Uh, I would like to introduce a young man who he's been working for years out there in the field of urban entrepreneurship in the Detroit area. He's doing what we're talking about today. He's facilitating entrepreneurship with a number of different organizations. I was joking with him this morning. He's got so many jobs, getting a lot of checks. But he was instrumental in Dr. Robinson coming here and being our speaker this morning. So Marcus Harris is going to introduce our keynote speaker for today. Thank you very much.
All right. And thank you, David, and good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. As David mentioned, my name is Marcus Harris, and I am a proud BBA and MBA graduate of the Ross School of Business here at the university, so go blue, right? Go blue. And I also have the pleasure of being a doctoral student at Lawrence Technological University in Southfield. Professor Don Reamer is here as well. He's one of my academic advisors doing my dissertation. Professor Reamer, thanks for coming. Go Blue Devils, yeah. Go Blue and go Blue Devils at Lawrence Tech, that's right, yeah. But I have the very distinct pleasure and distinct honor of introducing my academic mentor and friend, Dr. Jeffrey Robinson from Rutgers University. But before I give his formal introduction, I just wanted to make real quick informal remarks on my interactions with Dr. Robinson. Dr. Robinson truly has been visionary for me. He's been such an inspiration for me in my academic career. I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Robinson about a couple years ago. I had the pleasure of visiting his Center for Urban Entrepreneurship and Economic Development in New Jersey, and I was just blown away. I was like, wow, we need to replicate what Dr. Robinson is doing in New Jersey right here in Detroit and in Michigan, and that's my vision long term. And hopefully this symposium is the first step, right, in replicating Dr. Robinson's work here in Detroit and in Michigan. So I'll end my formal remarks by saying that as a doctoral student, I'm currently starting my dissertation in urban entrepreneurship at Lawrence Tech. And there's a saying in the doctoral community that when you are a new scholar, they call it stand on the shoulders of giants, right? So they advise you to build your research onto existing giants in the field that you're studying. So I can't think of a better gentleman and scholar to whose shoulders to stand on than Dr. Jeffrey Robinson. So with that, we'll give the formal introduction here. Dr. Jeffrey Robinson is an award-winning business school professor, an international speaker, and an entrepreneur. Since 2008, Dr. Robinson has been a leading faculty at Rutgers Business School, where he is an associate professor of management and entrepreneurship at the academic director of the Center for Urban Entrepreneurship and Economic Development at Rutgers University. The center is a unique interdisciplinary venue for innovative thinking and research on entrepreneurial activity and economic development in urban environments. All right? Through his research, his business ownership, and community activities, Dr. Robinson makes direct impacts in entrepreneurship and economic development policy and practice in the state of New Jersey and beyond. So, ladies and gentlemen, my friends, I want to introduce to you, it's a distinct honor and pleasure to introduce Dr. Jeffrey A. Robinson.
Thank you, Marcus. Very kind words. Very kind words. I appreciate you and the work that you're doing here in Detroit. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's my pleasure to be here today because we're going to talk about some things I think that are very interesting and very important. This whole event is kind of, I guess, the brainchild of David Tarver. And for all of the people who've been working with him and people who've contributed to this event, I want to say thank you. This is a momentous event for what we're trying to do here. And then I walk in the door and I start seeing people that I know. I see people I've seen at other academic conferences. Of course, I knew Marcus, but my background goes all the way back to being an engineering student once upon a time at Rutgers and then at Georgia Tech. And I see Derek in the background, and also as a sponsor for this event, once again, I want to thank you. You were one of those folks who were encouraging us along the way to shoot for the stars. Well, here I am, shooting for the stars. Because some of the things we'll talk about here today, I think are the things people can dream about, but even more importantly, I think these are the things that we can actually do. I want to share some of those things with you today. I guess I'll see Haj later. We had him over at Rutgers a couple of years ago at an event where he was talking about his work. So this is not unfamiliar territory to me. But yesterday I had a chance to meet and to talk with entrepreneurs, visit with entrepreneurs here in Detroit. It was fantastic, great experience. And there were some people who were instrumental with that, part of the team for this Urban Entrepreneurship Symposium. And once again, thank you. I'm impressed by what I see. It's great to see that there are entrepreneurship supporters who are there to support the entrepreneurs. It's great to see we have hubs of activity. There's a lot of good energy. We were in Midtown, we were in downtown, and on this trip I won't be able to get to all different parts of Detroit, but I just want you to know that even though I'm from Jersey, I'm pulling for Detroit. I saw a t-shirt yesterday in my goodie bag that said, Detroit versus the world. Does that sound right?
Everybody. Detroit versus everybody.
All right, well, let's make it the world. Let's make it the world. Detroit versus everybody?
Yeah.
Well, all right, well, you got some allies out there too, and I'm certainly one. In order to move Michigan forward, you got to move the cities forward too.
That's right.
We've started to realize that in New Jersey finally. And over the last 6 years, we've had a great initiative we call the Center for Urban Entrepreneurship and Economic Development. I'm one of the co-founders of it, but it was the brainchild of a professor named D.T. Ogilvy. Some of you, if you've ever met her before, you will remember her for the rest of your life. Because D.T. is an amazing woman who was able to galvanize a lot of activity in the Newark region of New Jersey, much like David and others are doing here in the Detroit area. So before I get to what I want to say today, I want to make sure I give you my core three beliefs that will undergird all the things we'll talk about. And rather than just getting up here and telling you, here are the things that we've done, I thought that the best way to share this with you was to tell you some of the lessons that we've learned over the last 6 years from some of the initiatives and projects that we've done. And then from there, perhaps that'll be a launch pad for the dialogue and the conversations that you'll have in this room and other rooms after today to get you going, to make the things happen that you want to see happen in this place. Here are the three core beliefs. First of all, if you're going to do something like this, you have to have anchor institutions. One of the things that we pride ourselves on at Rutgers is we have multiple campuses, multiple places that we're doing our activities, and we think of ourselves as being part of the community, not apart from the community. So in actuality, the business school at Rutgers spans two campuses. The first campus that our center is on is in Newark, New Jersey. And being around Wayne State University yesterday, it felt very familiar to me because of where we are in Newark. Our other campus feels more like U of M here. It's in the New Brunswick area. It's where we have all of our engineering schools and some other activities going on there. It's a little bit more on the outskirts. But what we've been able to do is to pull all the resources from both of those campuses into the efforts that I'm going to be talking about here today. Second thing is that there's a complementarities between research, teaching, and initiatives or outreach. And sometimes when we talk about this in university environments, we try to separate those things as if they have no relationship to one another. We figured out a way to bring those three things together. And I can share that with you now or some other time, but the fact is that if you can get those three things in alignment on any particular issue, you can make a whole lot of progress because they can reinforce one another. Third core belief, is that urban economic development must include entrepreneurship to accomplish the urban renewal, the urban transformations that we all are talking about. Sometimes people talk about economic development in terms of housing and jobs, so kind of writ large, and they leave out the entrepreneurs. You cannot have economic development without having the entrepreneurs. I just saw some statistics about Detroit, where it said 220,000 jobs had been created over the last year. 220,000 jobs. If Detroit is anything like the rest of the country, 80% of those jobs were created by small businesses. And so if that is the case, then what is our policy for those small businesses? We can give tax breaks and all kinds of incentives to large businesses all day, but what are we doing for the small and medium-sized businesses who are creating the jobs? So when we talk about this subject of urban entrepreneurship, David alluded to it a few minutes ago, and he said, it's inclusive of lots of things. Well, it is inclusive of lots of things. It's not a black thing or a white thing or an Asian thing. It's an American thing. It's an American imperative. And unless our cities take an active role in developing entrepreneurial ecosystems, we're going to be tossed out with all kinds of globalization. You're going to be looking at your cities and wondering what happened. Well, if you're saying that about your city today, I love the hashtag for this conference, Fix My City. Who's going to fix it? Turns out it's going to be entrepreneurs and activists. It's going to be people who are on the ground thinking about how to make things better. It means it's going to be urban entrepreneurs who are technology entrepreneurs. It means it's going to be people who are community entrepreneurs. It means it's going to be folks who are thinking about this from the green and sustainable technologies. It means we're going to be talking to people who are social entrepreneurs and saying, how do I solve this problem using an entrepreneurial approach? It means that we're going to need to be inclusive about the entrepreneurship possibilities. Entrepreneurship in Detroit and all the efforts that go along with it need to look like this room and not just be one group or the other group. We had to deal with that in all of our entrepreneurial ecosystem in New Jersey. Not that we're completely fixed it and figured out how to do it, but if it was only going to be technology entrepreneurship, that was going to be a problem. If it was only going to be about startups, that was going to be a problem. If it was only going to be about how to take biotech companies public, that was going to be a problem, because that does not bring all of the pieces together. When we founded our Center for Urban Entrepreneurship and Economic Development, I'd like to say that we realized early on that we could not do everything. So our first lesson we had was that we had to find collaborators. We had to find partners. When we started it back in 2008, we had some great opportunities to leverage this concept and this idea right away. Because when you come into this space, of course, everybody's wondering, well, who's going to do what? And I've been doing this for 25 years, and here you come. Our strategy, DT and I sat down and said, you know what? Our strategy is, number one, no duplication. Why should I be doing the same exact thing somebody else is doing? If somebody's already doing it well, how can we partner to make it happen? And then making unique collaborations will lead to some better creative solutions. So we were looking at the entrepreneurs in the area. Now it turns out, this is an entrepreneur I know well because this is my wife. And for the last 6 years, she's been running an organic beauty store in Day Spa. And this store called Eden Organics, and you can see the store behind her. In fact, that's our car parked in front, and this is my wife here in the foreground. She's been running it for the last 6 years, and we've gone through the whole cycle of startup, and now we're at that point we're trying to figure out what's the next thing. What we realized in our Newark region was that there were lots of programs around startup, but there weren't enough programs about growing the businesses that were already there, because the needs are different. And so as we started to look at the environment and really understand what was going on in the communities, we said, well, how can we partner to create a program that will create jobs, that will contribute to the economy? Well, the gap for our community was in these growth entrepreneurship, in these growing firms, these firms that were in the 5 or 7 person category who, given the right circumstances, some financing, some training, where they could move from working in their business to working on their business, we could go and create something that would add some value to entrepreneurs. And that's where we created something called the Entrepreneurship Pioneers Initiative. And this is one of our first classes of the group. You can see who's here. Now, we structured this program in a specific way. We were deliberate about how we did it. We said we weren't going to duplicate what other people were doing. We're going to be inclusive. We're going to bring other groups to the table so that we could collaborate to create this program. We set the criteria as such. We said we're going to look for first-generation entrepreneurs. Now you say, why first-generation entrepreneurs? Well, it turns out from the research, we know that first-generation entrepreneurs have more challenges than people who've had businesses in their background before, where their family has had a business, their parents or grandparents have had a business. Turns out first-generation entrepreneurs don't know a whole lot of other entrepreneurs. They don't have the connections to the financing or to just mentorship that would be necessary to really grow your business. And so we said, let's find those entrepreneurs. They're going to look like the diversity in our area. We're going to bring people together, and we're going to figure out how to wrap some services around them. And we created a 9-month program in partnership with, look at all these folks here, the Greater Newark Enterprises Corporation. They are one of the microloan funds and do some mentoring of our folks. The Institute for Entrepreneurial Leadership and the Growth Group provided coaching. And they supervised the peer mentoring that was going on. We had our Small Business Development Center. And then we had corporate sponsors from PNC Bank and Prudential and Wells Fargo who gave us the financial support and then also came and brought their people to meet with our entrepreneurs. And now it's 6 years later. 6 years later, we've had many classes. We've had many classes of these entrepreneurs. We try to keep it around 35 people. And we've had some success. But you can't do an effort like this without doing some kind of evaluation. And you can't do an effort like this at a university without trying to figure out whether there's some research possibilities, because these things can feed one another. Well, here's some of the things we learned from the first 5 years about our group of entrepreneurs. This program was successful from the standpoint of we had an 89% survival rate. We had 82% reported increases in gross income after coming out of the program, 61% increase in net profits, 20% of business partnerships were formed within the group of the fellows of our program. And this last one, which was part of the initial funding, came from a Department of Labor program called the WIRED Initiative, Workforce Innovation and Regional Economic Development. And of course, jobs is really a real important piece of this. From the time that we've been tracking this, 181 new jobs have been created. And that, in and of itself, it tells you something about the efforts that we're trying to work on. This is just one of the programs that we've done. But what we learned from doing this was how great it is to do the collaboration. Now, I didn't say it was easy, but I said it was great. And if you work at it, if you figure out how to do it the right way, then it can be successful. Well, let me tell you one more program that leverages these collaborations and partnerships. This was a program that focused on these entrepreneurs who were at least 2 years old. Well, I have a particular interest in social entrepreneurship and in social innovation. And we decided that we would create a statewide initiative around this subject as well. Because there are lots of problems, in particular in urban areas, that can be addressed by entrepreneurial approaches. We created 3 what we call social entrepreneurship summits, where we went to 3 different places in our state, and we brought people who were thinking about these kind of things together. Out of that, we created an institute, a training program, specifically for these social innovators. Now, these were people who were at the idea stage. They were thinking about how I would go about solving this problem. We created a program that would, over 18 months, provide the training, build the network, and then provide them a means towards getting investment. Because if you've worked in this space of social innovation before, you know there's a gap. People don't want to take chances on these kinds of ideas. And then if there's a for-profit and nonprofit thing, people have some confusion about it. Well, we developed an initiative that did this with partners. Rutgers, we partnered with, not only in the business school, we also partnered with our School of Social Work. We partnered with our local energy company. We partnered with the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, and one of the nonprofit support programs in our area. We marched into this with an idea that if we can get people with these ideas from the idea stage to the stage where they can start to launch, then we can start to move the dial on some of these issues. When we did that, we had 50 applicants. We chose 15 of those applicants. Those 15 applicants were able to bring teams of people to meet with us. And so that's why we had 15 teams, but we had 35 people. And we took them on field trips, and we provided them with the training and some connections Much like other training programs that are in the entrepreneurial space. You can look at these names, you can see, okay, these aren't like your typical tech companies. These aren't your typical companies that are doing retail. These entities, these ventures, if you got a chance to find out more about them, you'd see what problems they were working on. The local energy companies say, this is a good program. We'll put up $100,000 to split amongst the ventures that can pitch to us what their idea is. And so at the beginning of the program, this is how they looked. They were fresh, they were ready to go. And then I beat them down for 6 months and gave them everything they needed to know about social entrepreneurship. And on the other side, they had to give presentations. And the final presentations were given to executives at our energy company, PSEG. And from that, one of the groups got $82,000. Another group got $17,500 to start to launch their ventures. Now, let me just tell you this one snapshot story about this group. Fathers Now is a nonprofit organization that focuses on unemployed and underemployed men in the communities of Newark and the region. They are, in particular, trying to help men who've been disconnected from their families to reconnect, to help men who've been formerly incarcerated to get back into a good stead with not only their family members, but with the community. They decided they would create a cleaning and maintenance services company, and that company would hire the men who went through their program. Some of you have seen that model before, and so this was their launch point for it. And now here we are, we've gone through the 18-month cycle. And without the partnerships, I could not say that we would have the success that we have here. Where 40% of the ventures at the end of the program were already up and running. And they were all making some positive progress. And then, of course, we've looked at the research, and we've used this as a benchmark for things in other places in the world. And this has given us some credibility in this space. So the first lesson, find collaborators and partners. Second lesson, be ready to pivot. Because everything doesn't always work out exactly the way you want to, right? We tell our entrepreneurs that, right? Be ready to adjust and pivot. Well, we had a project in the local community on a street called Halsey Street. Now, as I said before, our Newark campus, our Rutgers University in Newark, reminds me of the area down by Wayne State. And if you can imagine, there's a street called Halsey Street that is between the university and one of the major Broad Street that goes through the center of Newark and the New Jersey Performing Arts Center. So there's a cultural district, and then there was this street. And the street had so many bad things that were happening on it. Yet it was so close and so focused to, right, and partial to the things that we wanted to see happen in the community. So we decided as a center to involve ourselves in this area, to get our hands dirty, as you might say, to walk down the street and to see what was happening on this street, to find out, look at this building has been abandoned for 30 plus years. Some of you can relate to what I'm talking about because I saw some buildings that had been that way down in downtown Detroit as well. Since 1967, we had our riots in Newark. 1967, there was a decline, and then this building, the company, this big department store went out of business, and it's been empty ever since. This is directly across the street from this building. And it turns out this coffee cave was an interesting little place to hang out now. But you say, well, how can this place, a little coffee shop, survive where this place is right across the street? Because there's some pioneers out there. And you got to support your pioneers. Got to figure out ways to support them. Well, there was a real estate entrepreneur who had ties to this area, who was thinking about ways he could contribute back to society, and in particular, to contribute back to Newark. He said, how can I make contributions? Well, he came up with a scheme to provide some seed funding to entrepreneurs. And in this coffee cave was the first recipient of that $25,000 loan. And it fulfilled a great role in what we were doing because, as you sometimes already know, they always tell you to go find friends and family money, right? Well, what happens when your friends and family don't have any money? So this was playing a very important role in the ecosystem to try to put some money into the system. Well, this was one of the businesses. There were 3 that were going on there. He asked the university to come alongside him and to do some of the due diligence on the various entrepreneurs who were doing it. And we did that for a while, and it turned out to be the beginning of something really special here on this street. We were able to help and support other entrepreneurs in here. And I say you got to be ready to pivot because sometimes different things happen. One of the things is after a couple of years of working with the real estate entrepreneur, we didn't feel there was enough money going on the street. So we shifted the attention of our students from doing the due diligence projects to doing active business plan development, marketing. We sent our MBA students to sit there and work with entrepreneurs on growth plans and development plans. One of the groups we worked with was this corner store. Once again, a pivot. This store here says Newark Art Supply. Unfortunately, they went out of business. We had supported them, but they went out of business. We do what we do. We support businesses as best we can. It doesn't always work out. It doesn't mean that we failed. It doesn't mean that the process has failed. It means that we are now part of trying to support what's happening on this street. And so we've changed our strategies for how we work on this street. I'll show you what has happened here in just a moment. But just to finish the story, the art supply store had started to share the space with a cafe. And so they were sharing this corner store right here. And what we ended up doing was supporting all of this with a sort of a little nudge, a little push to help the people realize maybe this art supply business is not going to survive. What if you take that sublease and turn it into a lease that would have the cafe there? If you go to that corner now, there's an art kitchen, which is a cafe that is very busy, and there's enough of foot traffic on this street that people from all around these sort of 10-block area come there and get something to drink, get something to eat, have some lunch. Fast forward to this past year. Over time, the city has decided to do some things on this street around streetscapes, making it a demonstration block, applying for some community development block grants, and really focusing attention on this. And that reinforced some of the efforts that we were doing. And then the business owners started to show up. And there's been some churn and some changes. But to fast forward to what happened this past year, remember that building I showed you before? This building, just like all the buildings in urban areas, it went through a couple of different owners. People were wondering who owns it. We finally figured out who owned it. Those folks started negotiating because if you look down the street now, you see there's a big building going up there. When we started, that building wasn't there. If you know anything about Newark, you know that Newark is the headquarters of Prudential. Prudential decided to move a major office building onto the street that we've been working on for the last 4 years. And so with them moving onto that street, some other developments started to happen. Now that Haynes building that I just showed you, the first floor of that building is going to be some retail space. So the upper part of that building is going to be some condos and lofts. And it turns out Whole Foods will be moving into the first floor. And so I can't take credit for all of that. Neither can our program. We've got a great team of folks doing things, but some of this just is about making the incremental change, putting some energy on the block, helping people to realize that there's value here in these spaces. And then other people start to figure out, okay, this is a place where we want to do something. And so if you go back to this corner now, you'll see there's a building there, parking decks and glass enclosed building. And it's really going to transform that block into something that we've always wanted for this area. It'd be more of a 24-hour type of operation. Hey, my last and final lesson. Got to know your audience, and maybe it's audiences. Because when we started this work, we decided we would certainly do things on a local basis. But we also thought we needed to connect what we were doing to this national movement around transforming, around renewing urban areas in the United States. And so we connected to one group. This is how I met Hodge the first time. We had a group of angel investors who were interested in black and minority-owned and urban investments. We brought them, we hosted them at our campus, and we held an event where, here's our founder, DT. He hosted panel discussions and think tank sessions about how we could collaborate across the nation on these similar types of projects. And when I think about how we connect with things nationally, like we're doing here today, it makes me think, well, it's great to connect nationally, but guess what? There's some other cities outside the country who are facing some of the same challenges that we are here in the U.S. And as we think about what we're doing in Newark, or as you are thinking about what you're doing in Detroit, what about other places that we've been? So I've had a chance to travel and to talk to people in Moscow and Shanghai and Lagos and talk about one of the things that's not only important to me, but actually has an impact on how they may think about dealing with their urban areas. So now we're thinking about how our lessons might be useful for other cities. And those cities are places where we now have connections with universities and the entrepreneurship centers that are trying to do things similar to what we're doing. I love that part of the picture, because as I close, it's important for us not just to think about what's happening here in our local environment, but we've got to just act locally, connect nationally, and we got to think globally. Because these issues are not just for us to figure out, it's also to be an example for other places around the world. So, what were the 3 lessons? These are the lessons that we've learned over the last 6 years. That you got to find partners, you got to be ready to pivot, you got to act locally, connect nationally, think globally. These might sound familiar to some of you, because if you work with entrepreneurs, or if you are the entrepreneur, maybe you heard this is what we tell entrepreneurs to do. We got to practice what we preach. We tell them to find partners. We tell them to be ready to pivot. We tell them to think about supply chains and to think about how you're connecting your business to other things. And in the effort that you're launching here today in Michigan, in the Detroit metropolitan area, you have to think about how you're going to do these 3 things. Because at the end of the day, you're only going to be as good as your collaborations. You're only going to be as good as your ability to pivot, to be resourceful, to adapt. You're only going to be as good as your ability to connect what's happening here to other things that are happening around the nation and around the world. And so we got to practice what we preach. What I hope I've done here today is help you get excited about this topic. If you weren't already, couldn't hear early in the morning. What I hope is that I got you excited about the possibilities for here in Detroit. Because I see the energy. I've met some of you before. I've seen you. I know what you're about. I've seen people like you in our communities. And when we got hooked up with them, when we connected with them, when we collaborated with them, we started to see some changes. I see a lot of good things percolating here. And I want these multiple ripples, to use that Robert Kennedy phrase, to coalesce into a tidal wave of economic development all over the city, all over this metropolitan area. I believe in what you're doing. I want you to know you got some friends in the Big Ten just down the way here in Newark, in New Brunswick, in New Jersey, that will be helpful to you. We offer our help. We're here to support you, and you got to just let us know how we can do it. So now, this is the time to do it. This is the place. And this is the only time you're going to hear me say this, ever. Because if I ever say this around Rutgers, they might beat me down. But this is the one time where I'm looking for you to do something big. So I want to say, go blue.
Put a community garden on there, or help, use this as a way to sequester water, or, anything like that. It's a problem with actually having the information.